So another reason why being able to really read the horse, if you're a coach, matters is being able to teach effectively. So, let's face it, those of us that have been around horses for a long time have learned in what we call the school of hard knocks. Okay, so that is through bitter experience, especially if you've been around horses as a child. You learn which situations might lead to a horse that kicks out or tries to bite you or in some other way injure you, maybe knocking you over or whatever. And because as a child, we're sponges, we absorb things very easily, we very quickly learn to recognise the body language and the behaviour that leads to those kinds of more threatening situations. That's just human nature. We do it with people too. We as a race, the human race, we communicate a lot through body language. So we tend to think it's with words. It's not with words. 5% of it, roughly, is with words. 5% of it is tone of voice. And the other 90% is expression. It's so much more than just words. And so we're very, very set up to learn that. And we learn that as children. And of course we learn it with animals too, because the research shows us that the same muscles that activate expression in humans activate expression in animals' faces too. So studies of cats, dogs, horses, monkeys all show that we have similar muscles activated in similar emotional states. So we do have this natural ability to read them, and that's brilliant. And the more experience we have around them, the better we get at that because of experiences and possible injuries, and also times when things have gone well. Because again, we're naturally set up to learn that way. So that takes us, if we have a person who has no experience of horses, then initially they will be unconsciously incompetent. They don't know what they don't know. They haven't been around horses enough. So when we start teaching them, we then bring them to this stage of conscious incompetence, which is when they recognize what they don't know, but they still don't know it, but they know they don't know it, and they know they've a lot to learn. And as time goes by and they start to learn, then they move into conscious competence, which is where they think about it and they do it and they know it and they know it. And then again, as that progresses further, so then they move into what we call unconscious competence. So that's doing it without even having to think about it. And it's a bit like if you can think back to if you're a driver and you can think back to when you were learning to drive. At the very beginning, you had to think about every single thing you did, just, putting the clutch in to change the gear, the steering wheel, all of these things. And you knew you weren't very good at it and you were very careful. And even when you passed your test, you kind of knew, okay, well, I'm supposedly competent because I've passed my test, but I'm not a brilliant driver yet. And you still had to concentrate and pay attention. And then, lo and behold, here you are a number of years later, and you'll be driving home, and you'll get home and you'll think, I have no memory of the last 2 miles. I don't even remember turning into that road, or whatever it was. And that's because you're at the stage with your driving where you are unconsciously competent. You can do it without thinking. Obviously there's a little bit of thought, but you don't have to pay attention to it in the same way. So you can be thinking about other things. I'm not necessarily saying you should be, but it does happen. And it's the same with riding. And it's the same with how we are around our horses. So we start to get really good at this reading of body language and being able to respond appropriately. And I would hope that anyone who spends a lot of time around horses would be good at reading the horse. So I'm not saying that you can't read the horse, and I'm not telling you to do the course on reading the horse because you can't read the horse. I'm telling you to do it because I want you to get better at it, and I want you to become, again, consciously aware of all those little signs and signals that the horses give us, because then you can teach it. So for me, when I started my PhD studies 25 years ago, oh no, not 25, nearly 25 anyway, I had some video footage of some horses, and I showed it to my PhD supervisor, who was a big expert in animal behaviour, but not necessarily in horses. And I said, look, it's quite obvious this horse is much more stressed than that horse. This horse is much happier. And he said, how do you know that? And I said, well, look at the video. It's obvious. He said, yes, but what are you seeing? We have to be able to measure this. And so I had to look at these videos and try and pick out what the indicators were, what were the differences. And the differences actually between the particular videos I was talking about, they were really subtle. They were there, but they were really subtle, and I just couldn't explain to him. What I was seeing. So for the rest of my PhD, I kind of focused on finding ways to describe, and bear in mind this is nearly 25 years ago, and there was very little research in this area, so that I could make assessments of horse behaviour, so that was 5 years, pretty much from start to finish, of me watching a lot of video footage and analysing it, and it really did get my eye in at the time, but it was only a 10th or even 100th of what I've developed now, simply because getting that foundation meant that then every client that I saw, every horse that I worked with over the years since then, I have been really looking at them and trying to explain to my clients and to the students what it is that I see. And obviously we have great bits of research out there now that have helped us all get better and better at doing this. So when you're teaching, so if you're teaching groundwork, if you're even just teaching somebody how to groom, how to tack up, don't take for granted that eye that you have for that horse, that ability to see what the horse is telling you, because your students will not have that. And so if you can verbalise what you're seeing, if you know which bits of the horse to look at and which bits to point out to them and how to explain what it is that's going on, then you will really help your students, and they will get so much better at keeping themselves safe and keeping the horses happy. And this also applies under saddle. So when you are teaching riding, so yourself when you're on a horse and you just feel that little moment where the back just starts to come up a little bit, and it's the horse comes a little bit more alive, and things could go either way, or the head comes up and they start to hollow and they start to brace, and they're little tiny changes that you feel in your hands and in your seat before things get too magnified. So it's those really early changes, and as an experienced and competent rider, you can make adjustments, and you can assess what's going on in the environment around you, and you can take steps that will help the horse cope better. So I'm not talking about putting your legs on and kicking them on through it. I'm talking about taking steps that help the horse to feel more safe, and calm them. Even if you are a rider who puts the legs on and rides them through it, you still have that ability to recognise those little feelings that they give you and know when to time your aids. And so you want your riders that you're coaching to develop those same abilities. And so if you can be really good at observing the horse's body language and those very subtle signs, then as your rider is riding around, you can tell them, I can see such and such is just starting to happen. And they may not really have a good feel and may not recognise what they're feeling initially, but with repetition, they will start to anchor what you're telling them with what they are feeling. And that is how we develop good feeling riders. So we do it all the time when we're helping them find how to get a nice connection with their horse, a good contact, helping the horse work through the back, swinging, using themselves well. We're coaching these things all the time. Well, we can also coach them about the horse's emotional state, how they're feeling, how they may be likely to react, because when we point out all these little signs, we are anchoring the feeling that the rider is experiencing at that moment. And so we are helping them learn. And so this kind of ability to read the horse really well and verbalize what we are seeing and explain it is so valuable to the people that we coach, whether you're a riding coach, whether you're a groundwork coach, whether you are teaching people how to be grooms, whether you are a behaviourist, whether you're a physiotherapist, saddler, it doesn't matter. The better you can get at recognizing these signs, the better you can get at communicating to your clients about why you're making the choices you're making and what it is that the horse is telling you. And also, you'll just get better at your job.